Okay, so here is the paradox of the quarter. We have an AI chip company whose products are in such high demand, they are literally renting them back from their own customers.
Just acting as their own landlord at this point.
Exactly. Welcome to Earnings Unscripted. It is June 23rd, 2026, and today we are unpacking first quarter results for Cerebras, ticker CBRS. They make these massive ultra-fast AI processors. And Miro, what do we even call this rent-back strategy? Is it brilliant or desperate?
Honestly, a bit of both. Look, you rarely see a hardware provider lease its own product to fulfill a contract, but demand is so violently outpacing supply right now, they are taking a massive cost penalty just to hit deliverables for an exploding backlog. It shows incredible leverage, but it is going to hurt.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh, and before we pull that apart, standard reminder that everything we talk about is just our personal opinion, definitely not financial advice, so please do not trade based on our podcast. But looking at the top line, the numbers are wild. GAAP revenue hit $193.4 million. That's up 94% year over year, and EPS landed at a loss of 22 cents, which is a big improvement from the 46-cent loss last year. They are scaling fast.
They are, but the core gross margins are the real story here. Up, I think, 550 basis points quarter over quarter to 46.5%, and they narrowed the operating margin to near break even at -2%. They're finally flexing some pricing power because the market is just starving for high-speed inference. It's a premium product.
Which makes the stock reaction kind of a head-scratcher. During the regular session, the stock actually rallied nicely, but then extended trading hit, and it basically erased all those gains, dropping roughly 10% down to about $201 after hours. Are people just hung up on that margin penalty they telegraphed for next quarter?
That's absolutely it. Management warned that this temporary rent-back arrangement is going to destroy 10 to 15 points of gross margin in the short term. Markets hate that kind of deliberate margin sacrifice. Plus, they're sitting on $3.3 billion in cash right now, prepping for that monster IPO in Q2. So the expectations are, well, priced for absolute perfection.
Right. Anything less than perfect gets punished. But if you step back and look at the utility, it's kind of mind-blowing. Like on the earnings call, the CEO did this live demo testing identical prompts. Cerebras generated the final output in 21 seconds. Then he made everyone wait on the line for a competitor system to finish the same task. It took 4 minutes and 37 seconds. I mean, that is just a brutal flex.
It is, but it's necessary. If you're building enterprise AI, slow responses ruin the user experience entirely. The safety filters alone add so much lag that if your hardware cannot process it instantly, the product fails outright. So speed is not a luxury anymore. But the way they bypass the usual supply bottlenecks to actually get these chips built, that's the technical pivot I find really interesting.
Okay, yes. Let's get into the details on that supply chain logic.
Right, so the entire industry right now is bottlenecked at 3 specific points. You have high bandwidth memory shortages, you have TSMC basically rationing their advanced packaging, and everybody is fighting over 3-nanometer nodes.
NVIDIA and AMD are essentially playing Hunger Games for those exact parts.
Exactly, and Cerebras just completely bypassed that entire supply chain. They use SRAM memory, built straight onto the chip itself, so no external high-bandwidth memory needed, and they use highly available 5-nanometer nodes, so they just avoid the bleeding-edge manufacturing fights altogether.
But how do they get away with older nodes and still beat the competitor on speed? I mean, we just talked about that wild live demo where they crushed the GPU setup.
It comes down to their wafer-scale engine. Most chips are, well, they're tiny. You manufacture a wafer and slice it up. Cerebras leaves the whole wafer intact. Their primary processor is literally the size of a dinner plate.
Wait, a dinner plate?
Most chips are, what, the size of a postage stamp?
Right. It is the largest commercial processor ever created. And because of that size, all the memory is on board. They do not need that complex CoWoS packaging that the rest of the industry is starving for. It is just a completely different geometry.
Okay, so they sidestep the traffic jam entirely, which perfectly explains Andrew Feldman's whole argument that supply is not their problem. He said something about the actual constraint being data centers, right?
Yes, he was incredibly explicit about it. I wrote down the exact phrasing. He said, "We are in the happy position of having supply for our plan and beyond in 2026. Nobody else in the hardware space is saying that with a straight face right now." But you're right, the physical reality of sourcing space and power for hundreds of megawatts is the real cap on their deployment.
Which brings us to the AWS piece of this, because that feels directly related to managing these physical constraints. They announced this divide and conquer strategy for inference. What exactly are they dividing?
So inference generally has two parts. You have the prefill, where the AI reads your prompt, and the decode, where it sequentially generates the answer. Cerebras is partnering with Amazon so that AWS Trainium chips handle the prefill. Then they seamlessly hand it off to Cerebras' CS3 to run the decode.
Oh, wow. So they are basically slicing the brain in half. Amazon works the intake desk and Cerebras runs the assembly line.
That is a great way to put it. It is called disaggregated inference. And nobody really knows the exact economics of it yet. Bob Koman admitted on the call that the split of value between them and Trainium is, quote, very difficult to say, as nobody has yet deployed a true disaggregated solution.
It is wild that we are still in the trial and error phase of physically processing AI at this scale. They're inventing the infrastructure model in real time because, like you mentioned earlier, if it lags, the product is dead.
It dies immediately. Safety guardrails in enterprise AI require massive background compute. If your system cannot enforce those safety rules instantaneously, users just drop the software. It's exactly like the early dial-up internet era. A slow return is an unmonetizable return.
Right, which actually loops us back to that whole $20 billion OpenAI contract. They deployed those initial systems in 35 days over Christmas, which is just an insane operational tempo. But does that speed explain the weird pass-through accounting in their financials? Because I was looking at that and it kind of broke my brain.
Yeah, that's a really crucial detail because they are building out these massive custom sites for OpenAI. Cerebras is handling data center leases, and they mark those leases up by a trivial 3%. It generates all this low-margin GAAP revenue that visually crushes their profitability on paper.
Oh, so that is why they had to invent this new core revenue metric, because otherwise it looks like they're suddenly terrible at making money on hardware when really they're just acting as OpenAI's commercial real estate agent.
Precisely. It masks the true unit economics of the chips. But here's the actual risk. If OpenAI suddenly decides to consume their massive compute deal inside their own proprietary centers next year, instead of using Cerebras' cloud, the company's revenue profile flips completely overnight.
So they are essentially tied to their biggest partner's deployment mood. That feels like a massive swing factor going into the rest of the year, especially with their margin guidance looking as messy as it does.
Yeah, highly volatile. And management is absolutely not hiding that. I mean, they are guiding Q2 core gross margins down to maybe 36 to 38%, plus an operating margin plunging past minus 30. So that whole rent back strategy we talked about, it is going to leave a serious near-term bruise.
And taking that hit right as you go into a huge Q2 IPO, that takes a lot of nerve. Or maybe just absolute necessity, right? But looking past this immediate drop, do they expect things to stabilize by year end?
Sort of. They gave a full year revenue midpoint around $860 million, which is great, but Bob Koman sounded very cautious about the timeline. He explicitly said, "I am being conservative for the second half, as we are still pretty early in the year and data center capacity is coming on." So he knows the constraint is not demand.
Right. It is the real estate. It feels like what we're really watching here is an aggressive infrastructure land grab. They are willingly committing
kind of a margin martyrdom right now just to lock in their ecosystem footprint for the next decade.
Precisely. You take the temporary hit so you do not lose the generational client. The hardware speed is solved, but the business model is currently bottlenecked by the actual laws of physics. They literally just need places to physically plug these systems in.
Which is just a perfectly ironic problem to have. You build the fastest AI inference engine in the world, and then you just have to sit around waiting for the local power grid to catch up. So wild. All right, I think that's a great place to leave it for today. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, and we'll catch you after the next earnings drop.
Take care, everyone.
Quick sign-off note, if you'd like these earnings chats to just naturally show up in your feed, go ahead and follow the podcast. As always, we use AI to help generate our voices, but we anchor every financial metric we discuss directly to the company's official filings to keep things grounded. If there's a ticker you want us to dig into next, just drop a note to earningsunscripted@datamadness.ca or catch the X link in our show notes.
See you next time.